Mario Kart 8 Deluxe is a video game that consists of 48 races, and within those 48 races, you can finish in 12 different positions. You could represent this data if you played through every race of those 48 races by the number 1 to 12 to see where you ended up on each individual race. If you then repeated this over and over again, you would end up with a very, very large spreadsheet. This is what I did. Over COVID, when I had very little else to do, I decided to take up streaming, and on those streams I played through all of the races and recorded all of this data, and I never really did anything with it. I wanted to analyze it in some way, but didn't have the skills until this module. Part of why I wanted to analyze this data in particular is because it's very important and personal to me. I took a lot of time actually recording this data quite publicly, and I would like to know more about it. I would like to know why I was good at what I was good at, and why I wasn't so good at the levels I wasn't so good at, and how my performance changed over time. There have been studies that have shown positive effects of playing video games. For example, one showed that playing video games can improve your ability to multitask, and another one shows that children who play video games can exhibit faster reaction times in measures of cognitive performance. Studies have also shown that repeating a task can improve your performance of it, but I want to know if this works on a scale as large as what I'm trying to do here, and for myself personally. My first hypothesis about the data is null hypothesis is that I perform equally well in old and new courses, but the alternative hypothesis is that I perform better or worse in old courses than new courses. So this is a two-tailed hypothesis. By old courses, I mean retro courses, which are generally quite flat and simple because they come from the earlier games where they hadn't made as many features yet. Or am I better at the new courses where you can go upside down and fly and underwater and whatever? Looking at this bar chart, I can't see any evidence for me being better or worse at either new or old courses, because there are more new courses in the game than old ones, so plotting this doesn't really help to see what's going on. When I perform the chi-square test of association, I can see that there is quite a high asymptotic significance, meaning it's very likely that the data would end up as it is if there was no correlation between the two, or there was nothing strange going on. I'm using a 5% level to check that, so if the chi-square test was below 0.05, I would consider that significant, but it's 0.318, so I don't consider there to be an association. For my next test, I wanted to see if there was any correlation between my two worst races. Now, I know from the mean that this is Rainbow Road 8 and Super Bell Subway. Spearman correlation is the appropriate test because I have two variables that are both ordinal. I have paired observations, i.e. they are matched in that they are taken from the same attempt each item, and I need to check if there's a monotonic relationship. I don't know if this is a monotonic relationship. I don't think I have quite enough points of data to figure that out. I would say there is a slight trend towards a line, but I'm going to check that. I would consider that linear enough to be monotonic. There's certainly no kind of curves or anything in the data. It's more of a clump, but there is a clump with a slight line to it, so I'm expecting to see a very weak correlation, if any. So when I run my Spearman correlation test, there's a low significance value, which makes me think that there is a correlation for sure, and the correlation coefficient is 0.324, which is closer to 0 than 1, so it's a positive correlation, but it is a weak correlation. So I would say I tend to do a little bit better at one when I'm doing better at the other, and vice versa, but it's really not a solid link. For the third and final test, I wanted to answer the question that I set out to answer at the very beginning of my Mario Kart recordings. With practice, can I get better at playing Mario Kart? Choosing a test for this was very difficult. This is a weird set of data. It is definitely non-parametric, and it is just a whole bunch of numbers. This isn't what was advised for this module, but it is very close to what I will be working with in my research, just a whole bunch of numbers all shoved together, so I thought this would be good practice. The test I ended up going with was the Wilcoxon signed rank test, because I wanted to match the very earliest attempts with the very latest attempts and see how they changed and how dramatically I improved, if at all. The reason this stood out to me as a good test to use is because it emphasizes a repeated measurement, which this is definitely repeated. When I compared the individual earliest and latest races with each other, I saw that none of them really had a significant change in either direction, which was frankly a little disappointing after all this time. Oh well, I can always try another version of the Wilcoxon-signed rank test, in which I make the sum of the first 10 attempts and the last 10 attempts, and then compare, although this also doesn't indicate a particularly dramatic improvement over time either. This doesn't take into account the data in the middle, but given the question is have I improved, I should be performing consistently better by the end if the practice has helped me. So, it kind of hasn't.